What do you think is the most important issue facing Los Angeles County, and what plan do you have to address it? And John, I think you're going to lead off.
I mentioned 4 issues, but I think right now the most important issue of all is public safety. I find that too many of us, our businesses and our residents, feel like they're under assault with crime. Crime is different in all of our communities. Right now, we've got smash and grabs, we've got break-ins, burglaries happening here on the peninsula. But in other parts of our city, you have many other different types of crimes. We currently have a district attorney that I do not support that is allowing our criminals to have more rights than our victims. And that's not right. And so we need supervisors that are actually going to push back against that sort of wrong, soft on crime mentality. And we don't have that right now with our supervisors. So for me, I believe our supervisors should take our resources. We should be making sure that we make crime illegal again, that we lock up the criminals that need to be locked up. We can't be soft on crime at this point. We've tried it, and it doesn't work. We know what works. We know that when people are incarcerated that are real criminals, it's a true deterrent. And so for me, as a supervisor, I'm going to make sure that our sheriffs have the support they need. They're 1,200 short right now, and that's not fair to them or to any of us. They need the backing of the Board of Supervisors, and I'm going to provide that.
One of the things that we've been reading it concerns Proposition 47, which was passed some years ago, and it seems to be one of the things that people are pointing at and implying that it has something to do with the upsurge in crime. So I'm going to ask each of you to address this, and that is, are there any parts of Proposition 47 that you think have worked and that should be kept or just tweaked? And are there other portions that you think should be eliminated or modified to a substantial extent?
There's not anything on Prop 47 that I like. And the problem is that it's a law that's now in Sacramento where we have even just the Crime and Safety Subcommittee. Nothing gets out of that committee that's going to help us repeal 47. So it's going to have to go back to the people, unfortunately. At this point, we're hoping to get any type of tweaks, because the other part is you have these repeat offenders, and it's a revolving door, and our businesses are under assault. And as a business owner, it's hard enough to do business in California. It's so difficult. And I don't even run a convenience store or something where the public enters. I run an engineering company. I can only imagine being a restaurant or a small business that's just selling something on Main Street. Our businesses are under assault, and our county supervisors are doing nothing about it. When Prop 47 was occurring, I believe most of them supported it. And you've seen nothing but crickets now that we've seen that it's a failed experience, just like Mr. Villanueva just mentioned. And that's the problem with our supervisors now, is they're not doing anything to solve the problems. They're not fighting for us. Our businesses are leaving. We talked about the 10 million population. We're not at 10 million anymore. We're losing about 1% of our population every year right here in LA County. And the only reason you would leave LA County or beautiful California is because of our politicians, period. And until people wake up and start voting the incumbents out and start making a real change, you're going to get what you're allowing. And that's why both him and I are here tonight, because we know that what's going on now has failed. We need to start voting different now.
Are there any programs that are in effect now to address homelessness that you think are working or could be slightly modified and be beneficial? What else do you think needs to be done to address this problem?
Well, I mean, any of you that have lived your lives in Los Angeles County know that it used to be where homelessness was really just confined to downtown and Skid Row. And we were never happy about that. But what we're finding now is beyond an embarrassment for everything and everyone. And we have people literally sleeping on our overpasses, under bridges, along the riverbeds, and it's not right. Here's the thing. Homelessness can be solved, but as an engineer, you always take a big problem. You can't just, there's no one solution to homelessness. You have to take this massive problem and break it into smaller pieces that could be solved. Here's what's working. The Orange County Rescue Mission, which is just south of the border from us, they are privately funded. It costs roughly $14,000 per person to house and feed people that live there. These are people that can be retrained. They're there for 1.5 to 2 years, privately funded, no government funds, and they have a 98% success rate of getting people back on their feet. That works. What else could work? You hear many people say, well, it's Ronald Reagan's fault. How many people here can tell me how many years ago that was? And if it was his fault, then that means something that was happening before then was working, and those were conservatorships. People in elected office have to now have the backbone to be able to say that we need to put mentally ill people in hospitals with real doctors. We can't medicate them on the streets. They're a danger to themselves and to us. And when you talk about homelessness, those are real people, but the people that pay their taxes and the people that are trying to run businesses and bring their kids to the park, those are real people too. And we need to consider them and think about them, and we need to take tough action.
Proposition 1, which will appear on the March 5th ballot, would amend the Mental Health Services Act approved by voters in 2004 by shifting the portion of funds approved for mental health services to housing and personalized support services, et cetera, and authorize a $6.4 billion bond to build mental health facilities and to build housing for persons experiencing homelessness and mental health challenges. Do you support Proposition 1? And if so, why? If not, why?
Well, I'm going to agree. Prop 1 is a disaster, and bonds are terrible for the taxpayer, and of course, it'll be great for the developers, but for us, once again, as taxpayers, we're going to be taking it in the shorts. And we're shifting money away to the wrong places again. This housing first policy that California has adopted does not work. The problem with housing first is you're basically giving people that have different addictions, such as drug and alcohol addictions, a free place to live with no accountability in regards to them getting treatment. If you're a renter, which maybe many of you are renters, and you go into a place and you put a security deposit down and you trash that place, trust me, they're going to be kicking you out of there very quickly, and you're going to be paying whatever the extra damages are. But for some reason, we allow homeless people to be able to trash these things with no accountability. I think about all the people that are on the low income scale of things and how they're trying to play by the rules and how unfair everything is around them. I said that homelessness is one of our important issues, but it's not necessarily because I care more about homeless people than I do about anyone else. I care about homelessness because it affects all of us. And people that are trying to play by the rules, they eventually just give up playing by the rules. And that's not what we want here. We want us all to be playing by the rules so that we treat each other fairly and right and equally. When our opponent that's not here tonight first took office, she said that her key issue was going to be to stop homelessness. Back then, there were about 15,000 people living on our streets. Now there's probably more than 80,000 people living on our streets. If you're going to keep voting for this person as your supervisor, you're going to see the numbers keep going up and up. She does not solve problems. She's not here tonight. Why is she not here tonight? We're both here tonight answering these questions in front of a bunch of very intelligent people that are eagerly listening and being polite. Prop 1's a joke, and our current supervisor needs to go.
In a related matter, we'd ask, do you agree with the state of California's approach in addressing housing affordability through the passage of bills that shift land use decisions and zoning decisions from the local level to the state?
Probably many of you know where I stand on this. I'm 100% for local control. Sacramento is not able to solve housing problems. When I first got elected to office here in Rancho Palos Verdes, I was up in Sacramento, and I had an opportunity to meet a senator. His name's Senator Wiener. I didn't know Senator Wiener at that time, but many of the other fellow council members who have been on their city councils for many more years than I had asked him, why are you passing these bills? You're not talking to us anymore. This is going to be onerous. Why do we have to be allowed to build high-rise buildings within a quarter mile or half mile of bus stations and train stations? We don't want that. And he looked us in the eye and said, "You had your chance and you failed. I don't trust you." And that was my first look at how Sacramento treats local governments now. I love local governments because we don't have R's and D's after our name. Partisanship is destroying America. Yes, both him and I are part of parties, we're registered with parties, but R's and D's are killing us. We need to remove them from state and federal offices as well. We need to solve problems with good people, not with partisanship. So in terms of local control and housing, it should be every city that should be allowed to do that. And our supervisors should be fighting for all 88 cities to have that freedom and independence. People that work hard live in good places, and I don't think they should ever have to apologize for that, and quit calling them NIMBYs.
What's your position on increasing the number of LA County supervisors to better represent the residents of the county?
I'm going to differ a little bit on that answer. I know him and I probably have a lot of similarities on the first few answers, but on this one, I want to remind people about another body of government officials that have 15 members, and that's called the City of Los Angeles Council. If you think more people that don't know what they're doing is better, you're wrong. And I know it doesn't seem like they're held accountable, but they can be held accountable, and they can be held accountable by us, the voters. That's how it's supposed to work. I love the fact that there's a packed house here tonight, and I hope that lots of people are watching this, because we had someone that's an incumbent that decided to not show up because she believes she'll be stuffing buses full of union members and driving their ballots to the ballot box for the next month. If that's how we want our elections to be solved and determined, then we're all in a lot of trouble. We need to bring all of us back to be voting and listening to people and holding us accountable as elected officials. The LA County government worked when it had 5 people that were qualified to be supervisors. But unfortunately, what you have now, you don't have 5 people that are qualified. And I agree, one thing I do agree is the budget is ridiculous. Our tax dollars are just being abused left and right. We need our money that we work for more than they need our money now. And as a supervisor, I'm going to find ways so that you could keep more of your money. So I don't believe that we need 5 or 10 or 20 more bad supervisors. I think we need 5 great supervisors. That way we can hold them accountable as voters, and we can make a difference this year in 2024.
Do you have any proposals for giving our youth economic opportunities in the county, getting them a head start or getting them on a career path?
This is kind of like a softball with our current incumbent. I'm sorry, we cannot keep raising the minimum wage. Every time you raise the minimum wage, you're taking away those economic opportunities from our youth, and you're killing jobs, and you're killing businesses. And a lot of people don't realize this, but anyone that has professional businesses where they bring in interns or others, when you have a $15 minimum wage in an hourly job, that's a $30 an hour minimum for a salary job. And so jobs are not just being killed in the fast food industry, but they're being destroyed in all of our businesses. That's why businesses are trying to automate at a record pace right now, because they can't afford to have people. They want people. I'm a business owner. I cannot hire the people I want if I don't pay them what they deserve and what they're willing to work for. I can't pay them a penny less, because if I try to, they're going to my competition. And that's why minimum wage is wrong. Government should get off of our back. So the best thing we could do to our youth is to get government off our back and quit doing things like minimum wage, because that's destroying jobs for our youth.
What would you do as supervisor to address overreaching land use and business suffocating environmental restrictions in order to bring industry back to LA County?
So the Board of Supervisors, one of the things they did a few years ago was they said that we're going to stop banning or drilling for oil. And of course they banned fracking. And we would all love to have done that, but unfortunately what it's created is hyperinflation because we all require our cars to run on fossil fuels, whether we like it or not. And that's the engine that's made our country great. We should be exploring not just wind and solar, but we should be looking at things like geothermal. There's a huge geothermal reservoir right below our land here in the San Pedro Bay. Also, CEQA is another thing that I've been fighting against for years. I used to be the president of the Harbor Association of Industry and Commerce that would represent the businesses in and around both ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. And we would go to Sacramento every year. We'd have to re-educate the new legislators on what CEQA is. But CEQA is not being used for what it was intended for. Now it's just being used as a way for stopping projects that are the enemies of enemies. It's horrible. We shouldn't have to go through these CEQA processes as long as we're following the right codes and building codes and ordinances. Developers aren't out there to destroy the world. They know that if they start to pollute, they're going to get heavily fined. So you really don't need CEQA on many of these projects, and we should eliminate that. And it's funny how CEQA gets eliminated when it's one of the big projects from either the governor or another elected official. So clearly it's not being used in a fair way. Another thing we have is we have the AQMD. The AQMD is an unelected body that does things like point source rules. Right now they're trying to look for ways to tax trucks and trains and ships, and that's going to destroy our ports. So I'm all for environmental regulations, but I'm not for destroying our businesses that we rely on every day.
Do you agree that there's a problem with gun violence? And do you think that there's anything that can be done at the county level to address the problem?
I think there's a crime problem. I know that our supervisors like to blame the guns, but it's the criminals that are acting in that capacity, and they need to be locked up. Do I think there's a gun violence problem? Yeah, there's a gun violence problem because our criminals are on the street using guns against each other. And so we should be locking them up. So that's why there's a gun problem and a gun violence problem, and that's what our supervisors should be doing. We should be supporting district attorneys that aren't light on crime like the current district attorney. You saw our opponent that's not here tonight support him in the past. We're waiting for her to support him this time. She's probably politically smart enough to not do it this time around, but for me, I'm for anyone but Gascon.
Do you see that there's any change in the need for public transportation in the foreseeable future from what we've been doing in the past? And if so, how would you address that change? What sort of public transportation do you foresee LA County having over the next decade?
So as a civil engineer, I've been in the transportation industry for my entire professional career, and I'm still a real believer in the freedom of the automobile. I think that once again, government tries to force us onto things that we don't necessarily want to use, and you are going from nowhere to nowhere. And if you're going to keep them unsafe and unclean, then people aren't going to use them. And time again, it's shown that as people have enough money to afford a car, they stop riding the trains and the buses, and they get their own car. So I think we should allow the people to speak and tell us what they want. And I think freedom in your car is what they want. Unfortunately, the trains aren't working. So I actually think that there are some certain bus lines that work great. I think we should continue those. But if you're going to have any type of bus line or train line, you better make sure they're safe and you better make sure they're clean before you do anything else. Ambassadors are great at giving directions or telling you how much to pay for your fare, but they're not anywhere near what you want for your security. We need the sheriffs and the police departments on those trains. I think that there are some opportunities to, when we do build any of these public infrastructure projects, what happens now is the government forces us to use project labor agreements, union labor. I'm all for union labor, but I'm also all for non-union labor. I believe in competition. I believe our tax dollar goes much farther when you have unions competing against non-union companies and not just using one form of those labor. And so for me, I want to open up competition. I want to make sure that our tax dollars get used wisely so we get many more projects going, because right now it seems like all we worry about is the next Olympics. Well, what about what we need right now? We need to take care of taxpayers and the residents immediately.
What's your plan to address Southern California's chronic water shortage? Do you think there's anything that can be done at the county level? And if so, what's your proposal?
Yes, well, first of all, the state needs to start using our tax dollars for building water reservoirs and other things that we've already paid for decades. And that's the first thing. And so our county needs to be stepping up and telling Sacramento politicians to do that. But there's also engineering solutions that could be done. I know that the residents of LA County have been asked to conserve water, and you guys have all done an excellent job of that. I know many communities have basically clear-cut your property so you don't have lawns, and you're not enjoying your property the way you'd want to, but you've sacrificed to do that. But there are engineering solutions to that. There's enough water that in terms of every day people are watering their lawns, there's runoff, and we have catch basins, and those catch basins basically take all the water to the ocean. If we were to actually take that water and send it back to our treatment plants, we would be able to reuse so much water in LA County that we wouldn't have issues anymore. And I know that there's some great engineers that work for the Los Angeles County Sanitation Department, and we want to leverage that engineering knowledge to be able to use that sort of technology to conserve water. I think we have done our part in terms of conservation, but now it's time for engineering solutions.
What do you see as the most significant infrastructure problem in the 4th District, and what's your proposal to deal with it?
So this week, our current supervisor, she did another big important thing for our county. She went ahead and renamed the train. Well, last summer, she repainted lifeguard stations multicolors. These are the things that our Board of Supervisors does. They do not solve our problems. Our biggest problem right now is transportation, and we're not going to be back in a pandemic, and we need to be in our cars driving around, getting our families to places and get to work. And what's happened is we have these measures, Measure R, Measure S, this sales tax that's destroying businesses in LA County. And we were all expecting at least $750 million to go to the 710 corridor. But because of environmental pressures, the Metro, which the supervisors are on that board, decided, you know what, no project. So I guess we as taxpayers should ask, are we going to get our $750 million back for no project? Because what that's done is you have a beautiful Gerald Desmond Bridge. I love that bridge. The first day it opened, I got in my car, drove it one way, came back. Just to do it, just to say to an audience like this that I did it. But once you get off that 710 freeway and hit, or that bridge, and you hit that 710 freeway, what do you got? You got a nightmare of trucks. And now, and that's the biggest thing that affects the 4th District in LA County, because that 710 corridor is basically goes right through the 4th District. So it affects all of them in that district. And it's also now affecting the South Bay, because now the trucks are coming to the 110 freeway because the truckers are going crazy because they're stuck in that traffic too. It's a nightmare for them. They're losing money sitting in those trucks longer. So here's what I propose to do. And I know maybe people are not huge Elon Musk fans, but he's come up with some amazing ideas. And one of those ideas is he's learned how to tunnel quickly, and the Hyperloop. I propose that we do a hyperport. We take our containers, we drop them in the ground, we shoot them out to the Inland Empire and get rid of all the truck traffic once and for all.
I'd just like to hear the sheriff comment about that, if you have any thoughts about a Hyperloop to alleviate the traffic on the 710 freeway, because I've sat on the 710 for many a minute in traffic jams.
I mean, anyone that's lived in LA County, you know that traffic continues to get worse, and we continue to pour money at things. And we know that building wider freeways, double deckers, the environmentalists are not going to allow us to do that. They're just not. That's why the 710 corridor project died, because people, even though they don't necessarily believe that the trucks are going to move faster and they're not going to be sitting there with more exhaust, basically that project was killed. So that's not coming back in terms of widening, or unless you have a new Board of Supervisors, which we should have. So basically the idea would be truck traffic is what makes things so miserable during the day. And trust me, the truckers hate that anyhow. It would be much better for them. They have a huge need for truckers all over. And so I'm not worried about them getting those. That's a resilient group of people. But getting those containers out of those ports without having to hit the 110 and the 710 freeway would be a dream for all of us. And I believe that that's really the only alternative that people would allow that would get those trucks off, and it would keep those containers underground and out to the Inland Empire. And it would also accelerate the way in which our containers get out, because I think they say something like 80% of the goods and services come from our ports, through our ports. Our ports are so important, and it's up to our supervisors to make sure that those ports thrive and continue to have great jobs for people and continue to bring the goods and services. So we should be exploring ideas like that, and currently we're not. We're just stuck in the mud with doing nothing.
I would like to loop back to the topic of homelessness again, if we can, and ask each of you whether you have any data regarding the percentage of homeless who suffer from mental health problems, and the source of those studies, and then what programs you think would be most beneficial to help the problem.
I don't know the exact percentage, and I don't know if anyone really does. I've heard anywhere from 30 to 50%, and that's a tremendous amount of people, especially when there's probably more than 80,000 people on our streets. So, I mean, even if it's just one person, I mean, we want to help the one person. So it doesn't matter the numbers. The numbers there's a lot. And I think it was alluded to earlier that we just don't have the beds to be able to take care of it. The state law hurts us because you can only have so many beds per facility. And so there's so many things that we've done to handicap ourselves when it comes to solving problems. And it always feels like people are always just pointing fingers that it's their job, it's someone else's job. Well, it's time for our Board of Supervisors, being the largest board of supervisors in the country, to step up to the plate and to start solving our problems. This is the reason I'm running. I can't take it anymore. I can't take the fact that we've got 5 supervisors that all they worry about is Instagram posts and how they look and getting reelected and having big hand sanitizers you can get at a fair that's multicolored with their name on it. I mean, that seems like that's all they're good at. We need to start holding them accountable. You need to elect new people that are going to solve these problems. So with mental illness, like I mentioned, we've got to bring conservatorships back for the mentally ill, because people that are of that state, they are not of right mind to be able to make a proper decision for themselves. We need to treat them until they can make a proper decision. We want to help them. But it's not helping them by giving them drugs and sending them back out to the streets to get hurt and to hurt other people. That doesn't work for anyone. And so for me, conservatorships, I believe, are one of the prime ways to solve the mental illness, homelessness problem.
Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
I'm a Rams fan, so I cannot see the 49ers winning, and I'm not going to say the 49ers. I would love to see Detroit win because I think that they're an amazing story this year, but unfortunately, I think the Ravens are just too good. They're just too good. Nobody's stopping them.
Portuguese Bend landslide is the largest in the Western Hemisphere. What steps do you see the county taking to address the dangers posed by that in our area?
It's a little bit unfair question for him because we talk about the landslide all the time in our city, but I'm sure he'll have a great answer as well. And so everyone knows that the county unfortunately created the landslide, not by purpose, but they were basically grading to extend Crenshaw back in the 1950s, and they activated the ancient landslide, and so kind of the rest is history. The county did step up at one point and did pay lawsuits to residents, and our city does allow people to live in the Portuguese Bend area, but not really the same permit process that the rest of the city has. And if you've been there, and I know many of you have been or have seen it on the news, many of the homes are on crates and containers, and there's some places where homes were level and now they're 80-foot different, and it's just been moving forever. And so unfortunately this year, though, because of the rain we had last year, the water table used to be 90 feet deep. Now it's roughly 8 or 9 feet deep. So the water has come way up and saturated that land mass that's sliding, and it's actually expanded beyond just the typical area of the Portuguese Bend, and it's gone into both the Seaview and the Klondike Canyon, Abalone Cove landslide area as well. And so those areas are now moving, and we've had 2 homes red tagged, which is very, very unfortunate. And I have some of my friends in the audience that live right across the street from that particular location, and I know that they're very concerned. The county has actually been good partners with us. Our city went out, we got a lot of money from the federal government, which we're very appreciative of. And we're, of course, hoping that the county will step up and give us some money to actually match those funds. So that's what I would hope that the county would do. If I'm on the Board of Supervisors, I'll make sure that the county is funding Rancho Palos Verdes for their project, because really it's going to require a very massive drainage project for us to start to get the water out of there and to minimize the amount of land movement. It's a very complicated problem.
Does the county have a census of the number of unoccupied residences? Because we seem to be having a housing shortage or an affordable housing shortage, but it may well be that it's not being used, the stock that we have isn't being used optimally. I
don't know the answer to that, if the county actually keeps track of how many vacant properties. I guess so. They have 115,000 employees, so there's probably a few of them doing that. One of the issues with not allowing the free market to work, like has happened in Los Angeles County, is that you have building owners. I'm one of them. I own a small commercial building in San Pedro, and it's after COVID, because of the way we've changed our way in which we work, and many people work from home much more now. A lot of these commercial office buildings are vacant for the most part. They're 20, 30, 40% vacant. And any of you that owns a piece of property like I do know that when a building is sitting that vacant, you're losing money, and you've got a problem. And many of the people that own those sort of buildings are just mom and pops. They've actually invested their whole lives. These are retirees that have investments in these properties, and now they're losing money. And they say to themselves, wow, well, the rents are so high, I would love to just offer rent to someone for a lower price, fill up the building, and it'd be great. But the problem is, you realize that if you convert into a condition where you're renting, now you've got to deal with the county with their eviction moratoriums and their rent control and their planning department that never gets anything done. And so you realize that even though financially it would be much better, you realize that you're never going to get these potential bad tenants out. You're only going to be able to charge so much. You can't allow the free market to work. And so now the buildings just sit empty, and people lose lots of money, and then eventually they just go bankrupt and leave them. And so for me, I don't know if they're counting the number of vacant buildings. What I want the county to be doing is getting off of our backs and start to allow us to use our properties in ways that the market is dictating to us. And right now, we demand housing. Let's make that happen.
Both of you address the important concerns that we care most about, and your answers or positions are often quite similar. How can we avoid splitting votes which lead to the current supervisor, the incumbent, winning?
Well, I'm going to go first here. So vote John Cruikshank for supervisor. That way you don't split the vote at all. He'll say the same thing. So I think you all realize that we start voting here very soon. And that's why the level of interest and enthusiasm has gone up quite a bit, which is great. And it shows you that we're not going to just anoint people to positions anymore. We're going to start paying attention, and we're going to vote for the best people for these offices. And I could tell you, and I'm just going to give him a compliment because he's been so great to me, both of us are better than the current supervisor. I can tell that he's someone that is a listener, and he's been on the campaign trail working hard, but not just that, but he understands, and I understand, that the best way to represent people is to use your ears and mouth proportionally. And what's happened with our Board of Supervisors is they've stopped listening. And because they've stopped listening to most of us, they do listen to special interest groups, but they don't listen to us. Just try calling. You got a problem? Call. In Rancho Palos Verdes, we're much different. You call, we'll fix things. I'll answer the phone. I give my phone number out. Mr. Villanueva gives his phone number out. I'm sure, in fact, the first time I called him, he answered. Those are the type of people that you want to elect. So of course, it's going to be a hard decision between him and I. I believe that my experience in terms of being a mayor and being a business owner are hugely, and an engineer, are hugely important to the county right now. You don't have anyone like me that's going to be on that board of supervisors. And so now you're going to have the diversity of thought. That's the only diversity we should ever care about.
Please, go ahead. We appreciate your coming, and if you have anything else that you want to add, this is the time to do it. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I appreciate CHOA having this forum. This is the only city of the 32 cities that's doing anything like this yet. And so that says a lot about Rancho Palos Verdes and the Palos Verdes Peninsula. And that's why when I come to a city council meeting every other Tuesday, I always say how honored I am to be representing the people of Rancho Palos Verdes, because you're engaged and you care. I want what Rancho Palos Verdes residents have for all 88 cities in Los Angeles County. And we can have that with the right size government, having the right experts, having the right people in county government. I don't know if 115,000 people is the right number. It's probably way over what you need. You need to have a mixture of experts and managers and directors. When I first started running, I reached out to the CEO of the county. Her name's Fezia Davenport. I asked her if I can spend 30 minutes with her on the phone. I'm running for county supervisor. I'm currently a city council member in the city of Rancho Palos Verdes. I was expecting, like when I first ran in Rancho Palos Verdes, our city manager here invited me to his office and we spent an hour and a half talking about everything that the city does. I was just a candidate for city council then. I expected that, at least a half-hour call. It took several emails. Eventually, I got an email back saying she doesn't have time. That is the sort of thing that we're all dealing with Los Angeles County now, and enough's enough. The other day, I was honored to receive the endorsement of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, and those of you that know, they fight for our property rights. They very rarely endorse county supervisor candidates, and certainly those that aren't incumbents. It takes a lot of guts for them to do that. But the reason they did that is they know that our property rights have been under assault, as we've talked about today. They know that the current representative is not representing you as the taxpayer, you as the property owner, you as the business owner. That's what I'm going to do, is represent all of you, whoever you are, wherever you live. Los Angeles County, not just the 4th District. The 4th District has 32 amazing cities. There's a city of Long Beach that has hundreds of thousands of people. There's a city of Vernon that has 222 people. They're vastly different, but the people all want the same thing. They want safety. They want less homelessness. They want to just live their lives in peace. They want the American dream. So I humbly ask you all for my vote for county supervisor. Please visit my website, johncruikshank.us. Please tell your friends and family and everyone you know about me. I have a name recognition issue, but with your help, I can win. Thank you.